everybody, it's Paige Evans. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to show you 180 boy layouts. We're going to flip through my son's scrapbooks, starting with my pregnancy until he's almost 10 years old and everything in between. So we're literally going to watch him grow right before our eyes. I hope you are inspired by some of the techniques that you see. Let me know if you have any questions, and let's get started. When I was pregnant with Fox, we took a picture of my growing belly every single week from 5 weeks on. And then the last photo is of me holding teeny tiny baby Fox. And so I've created a border of buttons and brads and charms. Everything is from American Crafts. So going backwards a little bit in time, these are the very first ultrasounds that we got of Fox. Love at first sight. I was on the very first Alli Studio Design team, and so a lot of these pages coming up are using Alli Studio products. So on the background here, I did some paper weaving. More growing baby belly pictures. I was on the Alli Studio Design team as well, and so for one of my assignments I used their awesome rub-ons and stickers and transparencies. So it says, "See any change? Me neither." So I don't think I started showing until I was 18 weeks, 20 weeks, something like that. But I just love these bright colors, and I love how they are still intact almost 10 years later. A scrapbooker in California, Southern California, where we lived at the time, Caroline, she offered to take some pregnancy photos. So we went to downtown LA and took a whole bunch of pictures, and of course I had to scrap them. So this layout features pinwheels, handmade pinwheels, and I believe this is Dear Lizzie's very first collection. So Dear Lizzie collection with a Dear Fox themed layout. Here's another Alli Studio page. I loved using her packaging in fun ways, so I cut up the packaging into strips and then used it to create a border. And I actually only added the machine stitching yesterday as I was going through and fixing all of these layouts. The adhesive I initially used wasn't holding up, but now that I've added this machine stitching, nothing's going anywhere. Photo is from the same photo shoot by Caroline. Another Caroline photo shoot. I just loved all of the pictures that she took. This layout is actually from the very first class that I taught in person, I guess I should say after getting married, because I did teach lessons at the scrapbook store that I worked at when I was 16. I taught card classes, but this was my first official scrapbook layout class. It's an American Crafts collection that I used, but I'm not sure which one. And we just did some paper weaving and embellishing. I also went through a phase where I notched all of my corners in unique ways. I think that happens more in the following scrapbook, but it's fun to see all of the different phases that I go through in scrapbooking. One thing stays the same, which is I love pattern papers and I love bright colors. So for example, lots of pattern papers on this layout. I was 25 years old and 25 weeks along in my pregnancy. And I'm not sure which American Crafts collection this is for. This was from, I think it's a combination, but I just created some frames from pattern paper strips. So this layout, if I'm being 100% honest, is not my favorite, but it was a fun experiment with mixed media. So I sprayed a whole bunch of stuff on the background over templates with different colors of sprays, and then I machine stitched in banners, and it's busy. Not a little busy, it's a lot busy, but I've got my baby shower documented and it was fun to create. So even though I don't love layouts as much as others, the photos are documented, and again, it was just a fun experiment. This layout is all about getting ready for Fox, and it looks like I have my silhouette cameo at this point, so I just used a font and cut out these letters, but I didn't use the inner pieces. I used the outer pieces, distressed them, folded them, stitched over them, the works, and added some chipboard boy-themed pieces. All right, you can close your eyes if you don't want to see baby photo, but this is the story of how Fox was born, and it was a special day. So here's just moments after Fox was born. This was one of the other layouts that I taught in my very first scrapbook class. There were 3, so this is the second one, and it was all about creating banners. So here's a technique that I still do even to this day, which is folding papers into these fun diamond shapes. And again, it's one of those ways that you can include a lot of pattern papers on one page. And I love mixing and matching thickers to create my own kind of ransom style titles. So I'm not sure which company created this collection from this page and the last page and the following page. I want to say like Echo Park or Simple Stories, but I just love the bright primary colors. Here, this was a chipboard sheet with kind of like gears and flowers. So I punched out all of the inner shapes, and then I used the outer packaging to create this layout and backed some of the open spaces with photos. Here's little Fox sleeping in his new crib, and on this layout I just created a bunch of borders, whether it was from embellishments or stickers, or you can see I used punched borders in the same craft cardstock as the background, so it creates a texture. This layout's called Sawing Logs, which I actually didn't know was an expression, and when my mom said that to me when she came out to visit Fox, I was like, what? So she had to explain to me that sawing logs means sleeping. So here I punched out a bunch of pattern paper squares and just layered them up in this heart shape, and then created a frame with some journaling spots. Halloween is my favorite. I'm so excited to have an October baby so that I can celebrate his birthday with a Halloween theme. And I know for sure that this layout was made when he was at least a couple years old, because you can see how my style has changed a little bit to add a lot more details and clusters. But it's one of the first examples that you'll see of backing cut files. So I've always loved backing cut files, even to this day, 10 years later. We had our first family photo shoot taken, and we've done it every year since. I love looking back and seeing our family grow. And so I was documenting one of these photos from our photo shoot with these, what are these? They're kind of like folded paper flowers-ish. Here's a cute kind of Valentine theme layout. I don't think it was taken in February, oh for sure not, but I just love how the reds in the photos coordinate perfectly with this Valentine theme collection. Fox's first Thanksgiving, I think I cut these with a Cricut, all these little shapes and words, and you can see I splashed some colors on the background, which is something I still love to do. And look how many pictures are on this layout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layouts. So sometimes I add lots of photos, but most of the time it's just 1 or 2. Here's Fox's baby blessing. I think these are from an American Crafts collection. My memory escapes me right now, but they're fabric swatches. So they're fabric papers, and then I just cut them into large hexagons. Oh, Fox's first Christmas was Fox's sad first Christmas. He got RSV when he was 6 weeks old, and so we spent a good part of December in the hospital. It was so sad, but he got better and we were able to spend Christmas at home. So this is a tree shape made from pattern paper strips. So here is our first official Christmas at home. And again, with the tree shape, I cut pattern papers into pennants and then added more and more as I got to the bottom into a triangle shape. And then I machine stitched over it into a Christmas shape. Here's some pattern paper weaving. That is a technique that I really loved to do with those barcode strips that come at the bottom of pattern papers. If you trim those off, you can do fun things with them, like create a woven pattern paper frame. More pattern paper weaving. Man, I really loved doing this technique apparently with the barcode strips, you know, waste not, want not. So this says, the cutest little boy in the world. I know I'm biased, but I mean, look at that little face. Okay, so this page right here, it brings me to tears. We were able to take photos of Fox with all of his living great-grandparents at the time. Since then, Great-Grandpa Ted, Great-Grandpa Jay, and Great-Grandma Marge have passed away. But we have these photos forever preserved. And it's just so great that Fox was able to meet so many of his great-grandparents. Great-Grandpa John, Great-Grandma Kathy, and Great-Grandma Doris are all alive and well in Utah, so we can just drive over the state border and see them, and hopefully we'll be able to do that again soon. But this is why I love scrapbooking. So this is actually real fabric, and I put foam underneath so you can see it's got a lot of dimension, and then machine stitched over it. Here is another Dear Lizzie collection with a combination of some mixed media, and then these are all teeny tiny punched butterflies. So what I did was put super sticky double-sided tape down into a chevron pattern and then poured the butterflies, looks like there's some stars in there too, poured it onto the sticky parts, and it has stuck miraculously for 10 years. And just some photos of me and Fox. Here's a layout, again, using lots of pattern papers, which is kind of my style. I just love using lots of pattern papers, this time in the shape of triangles. Paper piecing. It's one of my favorite things to do because you can include lots of pattern papers. So this one's got hexagons, squares, and triangles, and they fit together in this pattern. And then I created the title with baker's twine, which was really in at this time in 2010. It might have been 2011 at this point actually. But I placed liquid glue in the shape and then pressed the baker's twine in to the glue to create this title. Lots of photos. You can never, I mean, look at this face. I just had to show how he could be such a little manipulator. You know, he would make this face, act like something was wrong, but there really wasn't. So I just had to show that, you know, he had us wrapped around his little finger. So again, it looks like one of my favorite things to do back then was to put a cut file or stencil down and spritz over it with a color to create the first layer, and then added banners and these fun rosettes on top. So similarly, I put this stamp-shaped cardstock down and then spritzed around it to create this background. And then this is a fun star punch. This is for the Alli Studio design team. I can tell from all these little pieces that I put down. And this is one of the first examples, I think, of doing a grid-based layout. So I created the grid with machine stitching and then put a photo and a little embellishment inside each section. And that just helps the layout come together quickly and easily rather than looking at the whole page at one time. Just focus on one little section at a time. This is using the Chap collection from American Crafts, which I have fallen in love with all over again, even though I don't have a single piece of it left. I'm really a fan of these colors, and I would love to do something along this same line for one of my upcoming collections. So stay tuned about that. So here I think I found a template online and I printed it out and then used the sections to trace and cut templates, which this can be done a lot easier nowadays with a Cameo. This is an Amy Tangerine collection, I believe, maybe a mix of collections, and again with banners. I really love doing banners, so these are all die cuts, or I would cut them out, strung them onto some baker's twine, and notched these corners. That just gives the corners a little something extra. More banners, yay! This was made for a guest design spot at Scrapbook Werkstatt when we lived in Germany. So I don't scrapbook chronologically because by the time we were living in Germany, Fox was already 3. But this photo went perfectly with this collection, and so created it, and I'm filing it away into his scrapbook. So these are, I believe, they're washi tape that I put onto cardstock and then cut into banner shapes and then stitched so that they stay in place forever. And then a little added detail is this scalloped border punched at the top. This is one of my favorites. I love creating big titles from thickers and then a frame of photos. So it's a great way to include a whole bunch of photos on one layout. And these are all from our one and only trip to Hawaii that we've ever been on, and Fox was able to come, and it was awesome, and we'd love to go back someday. Here's some pattern paper piecing, kind of like a quilt. I love turning to quilts for inspiration because the little quilt pieces can easily be translated into pattern paper pieces. This is, I believe, an October afternoon collection, and I just covered squares with pattern paper strips and then placed them across the background. That is Fox's first scrapbook. I'm gonna go grab the second. All right, moving on to Fox's second scrapbook. One thing you're going to see a lot of is stars. I just love using stars on Fox's layouts. He is a star, and when we lived in South Pasadena, we had annual passes to Disneyland, and we went a lot. So you'll see a lot of Disney layouts throughout this album too. So fun to include larger photos with smaller detail photos at Disneyland. And I'm not sure if I used a cut file to create this star, but it's another way to include lots of pattern papers on one layout. And baker's twine. Baker's twine was hot then, and so I just used liquid glue and pressed the baker's twine in like a previous layout that I showed. We'll see a lot of Studio Calico products coming up. I was on their design team for a year or two, and border punches. I've held on to my border punches since then, so what goes around comes around. I love using border punches. So I created a sunburst. There's some mixed media on here with sprays, and filled in 3 of the sections with journaling to create a triangle. So 1, 2, 3. Here's another fun large title layout, mixing and matching thickers. And lots of photos. I think this is from a single session. Fox always wanted to go outside and play, and luckily the weather was nice the majority of time in Southern California. Oh my goodness, I just noticed Joey. That's our dog. He's still alive today, which is awesome. Joey and Fox. Anyway, so fun to flip through these and look at the photos and relive all of these memories. Here is a layout that I made with the Cricut and a cartridge that was zoo-based. We went to the LA Zoo, so paper pieced all of these animals together with lots of different pattern papers and notched these corners big time. Oh, it looks like this guy is coming off. I've had to go through and fix a lot of these layouts because of the adhesive. I'm not sure which type of adhesive I used in the first place, but it's all right. Fixing it and moving on. Here's another kind of quilt inspired layout. So I cut out these pattern papers into squares and then crumpled them up to create this texture, and then machine stitched in diagonal lines both ways to create this stitched quilt-like background. And this pattern paper for the background, it's scalloped, so it's got this really fun and unique edge. This is the third layout that I taught at my very first scrapbooking class, and we created these pinwheels or these flower shapes that I had done on a previous layout. Thought it would be a fun technique to learn how to do in class, and so we did. And again with these notched corners, these ticketed corners, I'm going to start doing that again. All right, you've seen it before. I don't think this is actually paper weaving, is it? Yes, it is. It's paper weaving using barcode strips, so still on that kick. And it's just a collage of some of my favorite photos of Fox when he was a little guy. American Crafts had a fall themed collection, and so I used fall or leaf shaped, I think these were cut files, to cut out leaves from pattern papers and cardstock and created a wreath design. Is this the very first wreath design that I've shown? Because it's not the last. This is a technique that I still do over and over and over again today. A wreath shape. So here's Chris and Fox. They're pretty much twins, so that's what this layout is about. It's using the Chap collection. I've got a few of those coming up. Just really love these colors, and created a large title that just kind of goes down the center of the page, and again with the ticketed corners. Here's the Chap collection again, and using the barcode strips to do paper weaving. We went to Underwood Family Farms in October to see the pumpkins, and so this layout, I'm sure it took hours and hours because I punched these teeny tiny diamonds from pattern papers and then layered them onto a piece of acetate so that I could move the entire piece around instead of trying to move each and every diamond around. And I did that 3 times, created 3 leaves, and then the leaves just kind of turned into one big tree. Love paper piecing though. Look at all those pattern papers that I was able to include on one layout. Okay, here's Fox's first 12 months. So every month I would take a picture of him in this chair so you could see how he grew. And I can't remember exactly how I created this layout. It's using the Chap collection with American Crafts. And I think I used a circle punch to punch just a little tiny section of a circle and then layered them around a larger circle. I just did the machine stitching yesterday because the pieces were falling off. If I have one thing to take away from this, it's use good adhesive. So I'm using liquid glue, but I think machine stitching is the best solution to make sure things stay in place permanently and forever. Halloween, some of my favorite layouts to create. I'm just such a huge Halloween fan. I love Halloween. So I created this big banner, lots of things going on, got photos, tags, tabs, buttons, a mix of thickers. Just makes my heart happy seeing Halloween stuff. Is it Halloween yet? This is I believe it was called the +1 collection by Amy Tangerine. So fussy cut, we'll start seeing some fussy cutting going on here. Fussy cut some florals and built the background and tucked in my photo. And then if you can see, I used 1, 2, 3, 4 different colors of thread to machine stitch this border. So that creates a fun texture as well as a fun frame design element. Here is a quilt design layout. It's lost a piece over the years. I could probably find something to replace it with, but anyway, I actually added the machine stitching yesterday again because all of these teeny tiny pieces were falling off. And so adding the machine stitching, everything will stay in place forever. So I found a quilt on probably the internet. I don't think Pinterest was around at this point. But I found a quilt and created a layout based on the the fabric pieces. Here's another banner layout, and I wasn't paying attention, but this might be the very first time that hand stitching appears on my layouts. Amy Tangerine was doing hand stitching on her layouts. I loved it. I've tried it. I've been obsessed ever since. So this is an Amy Tangerine collection. I cut photos and pattern papers into pennants and then created banners with them. Here's a Hambly Studio Design Team layout. It's about Disneyland at Christmas, so I was able to include a whole bunch of photos on the top 2/3, added some of their frame rub-ons, and then cut this title out by hand from their pattern papers and pattern transparencies. Back to Christmas time, so I love creating Christmas trees from pattern papers. This one is made from triangles that I machine stitched around and then adhered in the Christmas tree shape. And I outlined some die cut craft cardstock snowflakes with silver glitter glue. We spent this Christmas in Colorado, and at this point I was pregnant with Jane, so that's fun to remember. Another Christmas tree shape created out of green and red embellishments. So these aren't necessarily from Christmas collections, but I picked and pulled red and green things from my stash and put them in this Christmas tree shape. And then I was able to include a whole bunch of photos in a line across the bottom. Oh, and this page does have some hand stitching as well. I hand stitched around the tree and then did the base of the trunk of the Christmas tree. Here is a 2-page layout that never happens. I rarely do 2-page layouts. This is scrap lifted, the idea from Kelly Perky. I saw that she documented all of her travels for the year, and so that's what we did. We did a lot of traveling with Fox in 2011, and so I just took a picture. I printed a picture from each place that we visited and then used a piece of baker's twine to connect the photo to the place. And then the caption says where we were. This is for, I'm not sure if it was for Hambly Studios, but that's what I made all of the states from, is Hambly Studios papers. Pretty sure it's a cut file from Cricut. There's probably one in Silhouette too. For the border, can you see I punched a choo-choo train? We didn't travel anywhere by train, but trains are a mode of transportation, and that kind of goes along with travel, right? Here's a Hambly Studios design team layout. I punched squares and triangles from pattern papers and then put them in these circular shapes and then filled in 3 of them with photos. Here's more of these rosettes that I love to create, or pinwheels, whatever you want to call them, and then created them in 3 sizes, layered them up. This is using the Chap collection again, and it's pattern paper pieces cut into different widths. So some are thin and some are thicker, and then I put them in 3 different sections and machine stitched them in place. Check this out, tangled thread. So I know that that's something to do these days to create texture. It kind of looks a little silly, I think, but anyway, tangled thread, there we go. Hambly Studio design team layout, paper weaving, we've seen it before and I was not sick of it yet. Here's a layout for Alli Studio using her pattern papers. So it was Valentine's Day, and here's something that I was loving to do these days, which was punch a little section from the corner, from the edges, to create just a little bit of interest. We went to a fabric store and I grabbed samples of a whole bunch of different fabrics, and I wanted an excuse to use them, so that's how this layout came about. I cut pattern papers to the same size and then machine stitched over them. Here's cute little fox, so I've got some photos going down both edges. It's a good way to include lots of photos on a layout, is on the borders, and then filled in the center with all kinds of embellishments. I think this is Jenny Bolin Supplies. Here's kind of another wreath design. I cut pattern papers into diamonds and then created this geometric shape. Did some tone-on-tone embellishing, so a red brad on a red diamond, a purple brad on a purple diamond, yellow on yellow, etc. And that creates fun texture. So here's another grid-based layout. So I used these fabric washi tapes to create the grid and then filled in each little section with different things from Alli Studio, topped with cute photos of fox. It was a Sunday afternoon walk. This is one of my favorite layouts for Hambly Studios. I folded ribbon pieces, cardstock pieces, and transparency pieces in half, and then stitched them in place to create this cascading border. Here's another kind of wreath design. So I punched a whole bunch of these, pinked circles, layered them together. Looks like there's at least four layered together, and then machine stitched over them so that they stay in place permanently, and then you can bend them up. I think they've gotten a little squished over the years, but you still get the dimension. That's one of the questions I get asked a lot, is if things get squished, and yes they do, but check it out. You can still see that they're layered, and it still creates dimension and shadows, which is what it's all about, is adding those shadows and depth so everything's not perfectly flat. However, having thick things means you can't add as many pages into a scrapbook. I have between, 29 and 40 pages in a scrapbook. We spent a lot of time at the beach when we lived in South Pasadena in Southern California, so have quite a few beach pictures. I created these, they remind me of the umbrellas that you see at the beach, so I punched pattern papers into triangles and then pieced them together in these hexagons. Oh wait, there's some hand stitching too, which it's so messy, it's funny. So if you don't like how your hand stitching looks, you just gotta practice. It gets better. Here's another layout. Again, I think this is Jenny Bolin supplies. So it's that same pinked circle that I used on just a couple layouts ago, and I pieced them together into these borders and machine stitched around them so they stay in place forever. Here's another backed cut file layout for Studio Calico. So I backed each of the pieces with a pattern paper, and I used foam adhesive to create the shadows and depth that you can see. And then these fun wood veneer circles have the holes in them so you can add hand stitching. Here's the last layout of this scrapbook. It's the first of many Chevron layouts that you'll see. I love doing the Chevron design. And so I punched triangles from all kinds of pattern papers, placed them in these chevron stripes, and then machine stitched over them. I also bent up the triangles once they were stitched through to create texture. And here is a cut file title. Here are all of the layouts from Fox's third scrapbook. So again with the stars, and a great excuse to use lots of pattern papers by cutting them into wedges, and then I used them to back these cut out stars, and then repeated stars all around the layout, whether they were little teeny tiny punched stars or these cracked cardstock stars. And I just love these photos of Fox so much that I printed one larger and one smaller and titled it DJ Fox. He's about to go DJ at the club. Here's a layout using a hexagon punch. So I punched a whole bunch from pattern papers and then created this hexagonal background. Here's another case of backing a cut file. So I cut this is kind of a Moroccan tile design, and then backed a few of them with pattern paper so it leaves some of the sections open, which I would back with photos, or left empty and then embellished. Here is a 4th of July layout. So it's got a star wreath design, backed the stars with pattern papers, and then created some clusters down here at the bottom. Here's an Alli Studio layout, so it's got a backed cut file and hand stitching. So my current style is coming through here. And then I've got a triangle of photos, so your eye goes all around the page. Here's a fun paper pieced background. So I cut barcode strips into these diamond shapes. What are these called? Anyway, I know there's a specific title for what this shape is called, but it's escaping me right now. Anyway, and I did some hand stitching. So I took off some of the pieces and replaced them with hand stitching instead. These colors are just so fun and bright and vibrant, just like Mr. Fox. Fox turned 2. So it's a photo explosion. Got a whole bunch of photos on one page. Took off one for the title and then tried to add embellishments in some of the non-important spots as well as around the edges. You can see again, I've notched the border with a border punch and backed some of the pieces or all of the pieces with ribbon. Here's a leaf wreath design. Totally still love making these. This is a basic gray collection. Oh, how I miss them. Love their stuff. So I punched leaves and then created a wreath. This is an Amy Tangerine collection and it's quilt inspired. So I cut these wedges and fit them into squares so you can see their square segments. This is another Amy Tangerine fall themed layout, and I like how it's divided into kind of sections or stripes, and I filled the stripes with photos and then did some embellishing. Like a Washington wood veneer shaped piece. This is fall in Redmond, which is where my parents still live and where I grew up, and I love Redmond. Here's the same Amy Tangerine collection. Fun story about this layout. This layout is the very first layout that I did a process video for. For 2 peas in a bucket. When I was a garden girl, they asked me to start doing process videos, and I remember when I was filming this layout, my hands were like shaking because I was so nervous about doing it wrong, and I still get a little nervous, you know, as I'm filming, but it's not like that. So this layout has lots of good memories. This is a Dear Lizzie collection, and it's one of those ransom style large titles where I mixed and matched thickers and regular alphabet stickers. And I think this is the first layout where I've used an extra large photo. So you can see the subject, cute little fox, is still mostly uncovered. I see some string on here. But then in the white space or the unimportant space is where I built the title. It's kind of a similar design as before, where I cut these paper strips into these diamond shapes and then created a geometric background and then machine stitched between. Oh, it's Fox's first haircut, so he had long hair and then we chopped it. He's still oh so handsome. So we're getting into Christmas time. I used a triangle punch to create these triangles and then placed them into star shapes and machine stitched over them. So lots of pattern papers in one layout. Here's another kind of geometric design. I cut these pattern papers into arrows, and then I didn't fill up the entire background, just kind of did this right half and then added my photos and layers on the left side. I was on the Alli Edwards design team at one point, and so I used her digital designs to have my Cameo draw. The Cameo drew her digital designs and then I watercolored over them, and it didn't turn out as I wanted it to because the water made the pen like dissolve. But you know, not everything goes according to plan, and that's okay. I've still got a cute photo of Fox forever documented. Here's an LE Studio layout. So this is kind of a grid design where you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections. I think I just wanted an excuse to use all of these cute frames. So by backing the frames with photos and then just adding some embellishments, you've got a quick and easy page. Here's a banner layout for Studio Calico. Oh my goodness, look at this fox wood veneer. So it has these holes and you can stitch a fox. So cute, so perfect for him. So you've seen me do this before, just cut pattern papers into pennants and stitch along the tops to create the banners. Here's an Alli Edwards layout using her digital design. So I backed this days of the week cut file. I see a little something something right there, okay. Backed this days of the week cut file and then added some of her stamps and other cut files. Ah, he's so cute. Here's a Studio Calico collection and a cut file. So this is when I was really getting into my cut file and cutting papers out. Lots of pattern papers, adding lots of pattern papers on the layout. This was a whole new world and way to add lots of pattern papers to a layout. This one has lots of dimension. It's super fun. You can see I used different depths and thicknesses of foam squares to attach these randomly sized pieces of pattern paper, and then used an Amy Tangerine stitching template to stitch this to directly on the white space of this photo. He's not 2 here, he's 2.5. There's a cute video we have of him and watch it often of him saying 2.5. So here is when my little sister got married, and so I fussy cut these flowers and created, it's kind of a quadrant. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. 2 are filled with photos and 2 are filled with fussy cut flowers, and then used a scalloped apron border punch on opposite corners. Here's a Studio Calico layout. So I backed the font with pattern papers and then did some machine stitching to add texture and interest to the background. Here's another round design using, I don't think I used a punch for this one. I think I punched squares from pattern papers and then cut them in half to create these triangles, and then machine stitched them in concentric circles all around the background. Here's a Studio Calico layout using a hello cut file. So I just cut it out from a whole bunch of different pattern papers and stitched it to the background. So you get lots of colors, lots of pattern, and it's just a repeating design. I think this is an older crate paper collection, and so I cut these diamond shapes out of a bunch of different pattern papers and replaced 3 of them with photos instead of pattern papers. Fox, do you want let me start over. Fox, do you want chicken? No, candy, just candy. You and me both. When there's an option, always choose candy, right? Here's a basic gray guest design layout. So I created a heart from pattern paper strips. This is one of the layouts that I created for big picture classes. This is a great way to use up extra thickers. I place them in concentric circles, and it's just a fun, colorful layout. Here's backing a cut file. So I think I cut out 2 of them, and then by cutting one in half, and then I placed the halves on opposite sides, kitty corner sides, and there's cute little fox, front and center. Here's another layout with banners. So I cut out a few different shapes. Looks like there's larger triangles, smaller triangles, pennants, circles that I cut in half, and then squares that I cut in half, and then machine stitched them in place. We're gonna see a lot of backing cut files. Like I said, it's something I've loved to do from almost the very beginning. So I backed this geometric cut file, just a few sections with pattern papers, and then created a cluster to feature the photo. I think this is another crate paper collection, and I used metal dies to cut out these geometric shapes. There's some tags, ovals, and then printed my photos small so that I could include a lot of photos of Fox and Chris. Here's another banner. This one's just one larger banner. And there's a fox sticker. So, you know, foxes are they still really in style at one point? And so it was so fun to add lots of fox themed pieces onto layouts about Fox. Here's it's kind of like a mixed media hodgepodge. It's got a lot of different techniques. I watercolored the leaf cut file, did some hand stitching around the edges, changing my color of thread where the watercolor changed color, and then backed it with a bunch of different cut files, leaf cut files that have words in the middle of them. I think this is for Studio Calico back then. Here's a fun shaker star. So I punched tiny stars, and also there's little wood veneer pieces, and I cut a star shape from, I think this is a page protector, poured it into the bottom, stitched across, poured more in, stitched across, poured more in, stitched across, and again. So that's how I created this shaker star. And I just love star shapes for Fox. This was about potty training him, the good old days. Here's a rainbow layout. It's one of the first times I started doing this technique with tone on tone and going in rainbow order. So these are all teeny tiny metal dies that I cut from pattern papers and then arranged in rainbow order. Halloween layout. I don't know why, they just get me so excited. I think this is a mix of a whole bunch of different Halloween themed collections, but I just wanted to document his Halloween 2013 where he was a ghost. Here's a torn paper frame layout. So I tore all of these pieces of pattern paper and tucked them around the central photo and then kept adding more and more until I got almost to the edge, and then I did some machine stitching across. Here's the last layout in this scrapbook. Do you remember that song, What Does the Fox Say? Well, of course I had to create a layout with that as the title. So Fox got his face painted like a fox, and for the design element I punched circles, a whole bunch of circles from pattern papers, and then I layered them on the background using dimensional adhesive so that they pop off the background a little bit. That's scrapbook number 3. I'm gonna go grab the pages from scrapbook number 4. Here are all of the layouts in Fox's 4th scrapbook. So this is using a crepe paper collection and a triangle punch, and then I stitched them in place to create this fun, whimsical background. Here is a heart background cut file. They're teeny tiny hearts, and then I trimmed pattern papers into strips to back the cut file, and then scattered some embellishments around to add interest, and then just a little photo. Here's a star-shaped layout. I think I used white acrylic paint to paint the star and then defined the star shape with all kinds of embellishments. Backing a round cut file with all these pattern papers, love including lots of pattern papers, and then kind of scattered my embellishments down diagonally. Here's backing a cut file with cardstock. I did some stamping on these cardstocks and then filled in others with pattern papers. And I don't know why, but sometimes I scrapbook the same photo. I have enough photos where I don't need to do that, but I must have forgotten in between. Here's a layout for Studio Calico. I wanted to feature this stamp and pattern papers, so I stamped all of these designs, fussy cut them out, and then filled in this big thought bubble because I just wanted to know what he was thinking. Titled it, A Penny for Your Thoughts. Here is a cut file backed with some pattern papers and then machine stitching. You can see how I did a whip stitch around this star and then stitched through the holes of this rad wood veneer piece, and then even hand stitched these journaling lines and then this geometric shape right here. Woo, look at all the pattern papers on this one. So I'm sure this one took hours and hours to create. I'm gonna flip it over so you can see the back. Here's all these different pattern papers. I think I had the Cameo cut out all of these pieces instead of doing it by hand, and that is a big time saver. And I used foam squares to attach all of the pattern papers in place so that there are shadows and depth. This is one of my cut files, so it's a star and it has the word bright at the bottom. And then I used a star punch to punch a bunch of different pattern papers to create a colorful background, but I left the inside pretty plain so that I could add my photo and it could be the focus right there. The texture on this layout is so fun, it makes me want to try doing this technique again, and it feels awesome too. So I punched squares from pattern papers, trimmed the squares in half to create triangles, placed them in this quilt design on this half of the layout, and then used a zigzag stitch to stitch around every single piece. Zoom in so you can see that texture. All right, next layout, it's concentric triangles, machine stitched in place. Actually, I think this is a swirl, so it goes all the way into a swirl shape leading to the center with the photos. This layout came together quickly. I remember I kind of just dropped the frames on the layout and then moved them around just a little bit, overlapping, and then added machine stitching to make sure they stay in place permanently, and then filled in a few of them with black and white photos. This is a guest design layout, but I can't remember what it's for, but it was a lot of craft and chalk pieces. And so on the top half, I guess the top 2/3, I created this cluster, and then on the bottom is a little title, and then my journaling is on this tag, which tucks into this little pocket right here. Here's some folded squares to create these diamond shapes. Fun way to use lots of different pattern papers and then machine stitched over them. Here's kind of a mixed media layout, so I watercolored with blues and greens on the background. Punched out stars. Actually, I think I die cut stars because I can't punch on the middle with this shape. And then added a cut file on top and a collage of little photos. Here's a similar layout to that triangle zigzag stitch layout, but instead of stitching, I just adhered them down. It's kind of a softer design. It's got me and Fox together. So here I saw an alphabet image and I wanted to recreate that alphabet with pattern papers. So I hand cut all of these letters and pieced them together on the background. Here's a backed cut file layout. It's a geometric design and I backed most of them with different pattern papers. Again, using foam squares to create those shadows and dimension. Here's a paper strip heart. This is for Ellie's studio. So I started with a little strip and then built to the widest part, and then you do 2 little bumps at the top to create the heart. This is one of my favorite layouts. I don't really know why. I think it might be because I used this really dark thread so you can see the contrast, but it's one of those layouts that I love to repeat with different shapes. I've created this same style layout for Jane and did it in a heart shape instead of a star. And this is an old crate paper collection. And I love how the colors in the pattern papers match perfectly with his shirt and tie. Using a square punch to punch a whole bunch of different pattern papers and place them in a grid design, and then replaced some of them with flare badges or replaced a section of them with photos and then embellished on top. Here's a hand-cut large title layout. So I cut letters out from pattern papers and adhered them with foam squares. It says Adventure Seeker. Halloween layout, yay! So I created a large boo on the background and then filled in the letters with sequins and then went to town embellishing all around, and it's really sparkly. Here's a layout that I taught at a class in Germany. So everybody was given a 1-inch circle punch. So we punched pattern papers, cut them in half, and then created borders for a fun frame around the photo in the center. Here is another layout with lots of pattern papers. I had the cameo cut out these pieces and then put them in place with foam squares. So they literally pop off the background. Here's one of my cut files that I backed with a colorful pattern paper. So it creates this really cool texture design. It's Christmas time, so we've got some Christmas things going on. Here's another layout for Studio Calico. It came with these arrow die cuts. So in the white space of this, it's a photo pattern paper, photo reel pattern paper. I just filled in with all the arrows pointing directly to the photo. Here is using a Chamel collection. So I backed this geometric cut file with pattern papers using foam squares and then created a cluster with the photo and embellishments and the title so your eye goes right there. Here's a layout for Alli Edwards. So this is her digital design, and I had fun watercoloring over it to create all these different colors. They're like little circles. So watercolor little circles and you get this fun and colorful pattern. Okay, so this is a momentous layout and part of the flip through because this is the first layout that uses my signature collections. So this is my Fancy Free collection, my very first collection with pink paisley, and most of the layouts from here on out will be using my collection. So that's just a really fun milestone in my scrapbooking. This is my cut and fold heart cut file. So you see it cuts these half hearts and then you bend the hearts over and it completes the heart shape. And I backed the open hearts with pattern papers, and then it's just a really colorful layout. This one isn't my collection, it's a Studio Calico collection, and it has all of these circles on the background, so I filled in the circles with pattern papers created with circle punches. This is using a pink paisley collection, so I created kind of a constellation background and with machine stitching and teeny tiny star punches. In my first collection called Fancy Free, there was a stitching template to create this heart string art, and so I added some sequins and then topped it with buttons to create little pops of eye candy. Another star layout using Fancy Free, and I painted inside each section with a different color for contrast. This layout was made with a pink paisley collection, and I pulled out all of the blues and black and white pattern papers and cut out diamonds, placed them in this geometric design, and then did hand stitching between to create texture. This layout was made for Carrie Bradford Studio when I was on her design team, so this is one of her digital designs, which I had the cameo draw, and then I painted in the letters with gouache, and instead of painting in these parts, I hand stitched over them. So it's 2016 graduation. I fussy cut all of these hearts from pattern papers and then arranged them in rainbow order and then hand stitched around them to create texture. This was made with my second collection with pink paisley called Take Me Away. So I backed my Superstar cut file with pattern papers and then did some fun mixed media on the background to help the cut file pop. This was also made with Take Me Away, features stars, stars, and more stars. So punched stars, die cut stars with hand stitching in different sizes, and then cascading down from corner to corner. And what do you know, more stars. Also using Take Me Away, so I punched stars, I die cut stars from pattern papers and also vellum, and then used watercolors on the background. And there's 3 rows, so you've got 3 photos, so your eye goes all around the layout. More stars, if you can believe it or not. This was made, I'm gonna bring this layout back. This layout was made with my 3rd collection with pink paisley called Oh My Heart, and this one was made with my 4th collection with pink paisley called Turn the Page. So there are quite a few star shapes in this collection, so I fussy cut some stars. There's some chipboard star stickers and cardstock star stickers, some star stamps, and again cascading from one corner to the other. Here's a wreath design, throwing it back to my 1st collection, Fancy Free. One of the papers has a bunch of sentiments in circles, so I fussy cut those out and placed them in a wreath design, embellishing with buttons and sequins and puffy stickers and all the things. Here's kind of a grid-based design, so I hand-stitched these lines and then filled in the sections with journaling spots and photos and the title, etc. Here's a paper-pieced heart using Turn the Page. So if you can see, these are itty-bitty triangles, so they're squares cut in half to make the triangles, and then I paper-pieced this heart together with a border of photos and embellishments going across the center. Here's some more paper piecing with triangles. I guess that's what I was really into around this time, was creating different shapes with pattern paper triangles. It's a great way to include lots of pattern papers, which I'm sure you've seen by now. That's my favorite thing to do, is to use lots of pattern papers. This was made with my Take Me Away collection, so I made these paper airplanes with teeny tiny pieces of paper, and then I hand-stitched swirls connecting them all and creating these, paper airplane paths. Okay friends, that's the 4th scrapbook, 1 to go. I'm gonna go grab the pages from his 5th scrapbook. Here we go. Here are the pages from Fox's 5th scrapbook. So this page is a cut file of a rainbow. So I cut the stripes from different pattern papers and did some tone-on-tone stitching, did some stitching around the clouds, did some mixed media on the background with modeling paste, so it looks like rain. So lots of texture going on this layout. Really fun to make. Clouds made from circle punches. So I punched larger circles, medium circles, small circles, layered them together, and then trimmed off the bottoms to create these clouds. This is a pink paisley collection. I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called. Here's a layout that I created for big picture classes. So I did embroidery in a hoop, making all of these different kinds of stitches. And then I cut it out into a circle shape to back this hot air balloon design. Here's some paper weaving. So I did paper weaving on the background and then created a cluster with the photo and embellishments. Here's a similar layout to one shared before with the stars from my Turn the Page collection, but this time I added hand stitching details to most of the stars. It's this first day of 1st grade. Here's a cut file layout. It's a fox, so of course it had to be for fox, and I backed each section with a different pattern paper from my Turn the Page collection and then hand stitched over the cut file. Here's a grid-based layout, so if you can see I did different types of stitches with my sewing machine using different colors, so it creates a super funky background. And then I filled in most of the sections with a punched cupcake, and then some of the other sections I filled with photos, and then I topped the cupcakes with the title. This is using my Pick Me Up collection. Here's a winter themed layout. It's got a lot of sparkle from sequins and glitter glue. So this is one of my snowflake border cut files, and then added little pops of color with watercoloring on the background and then enamel dots and chipboard circles. This is my whimsical collection. So my 5th or 6th collection, I've lost track now. Here is a full 12 by 12 photo layout. So I printed this at home on my Canon printer and then filled in the white space with these layered punched hearts. Did some decorative punching on the edge, and then this is a rub-on. For this layout, I did some mixed media on a couple pieces of white cardstock, and then I cut out concentric hearts, layered them together, and then machine stitched them down to create this kind of cross design. Here's a guest design layout for Studio Calico. So it came with a package of ephemera and chipboard, and so I just placed them almost evenly spaced, kind of like a puzzle, on the background, and then added a photo right there. Here's the other guest design layout for that same spot with Studio Calico. So I used star punches in different sizes to punch pattern paper stars and stars from vellum, layered them up to create these dimensional concentric stars, and then placed them in an X across the background. This layout, I think I had my Cameo draw the best day ever title, and then I hand stitched these sequins onto the background. So this was pretty labor intensive, but totally worth it. It's super fun, one of my favorites. This is one that's been on my wall on my layout display since 2018. I just can't seem to put it away. Here I had my Silhouette Cameo cut out these thin stars. They're concentric, and then I machine stitched them in place with silver thread, so it's got a little bit of sparkle, and then created the border, or created the cluster of photos and title embellishments across the center. This was for a guest design spot with Pink Fresh Studio, so that's where all of the supplies are from for this layout. Here's one of my Chevron layouts. I like to create one of these with every collection that I release with Pink Paisley, and this is using the Pick Me Up collection. Here's a layout that I taught how to make. So we hand cut the title from pattern papers and then adhered them in place with foam squares down the middle of the page, flanked by photos on either side. What do you know, another Chevron layout. So this is using my Truly Grateful collection, and one extra step that I did on this one compared to the one before the last layout was I distressed the edges with scissors to create extra contrast. Here is a whole bunch of hand-cut hearts made from my whimsical collection, and I even cut the photos into heart shapes. This was fun to make. Origami Stars, made with my whimsical collection, and I placed the stars into a wreath and filled it in with a photo and school-themed embellishments, since I took this photo of Fox and his friend at school. Since I was in this photo with Fox, I figured why not go a little floral, so I backed my cut file with pattern papers. This is my Horizon collection. Here's more stars. So I used my Truly Grateful collection and all the colors, did some mixed media on the background with a star stencil, and then I took the time to distress all of the edges of all the stars to give them kind of a white and messy edge, and it just helps them pop off the background a little bit more. Here's another layout that I used in a class, and it's a grid design. So we've got this 4x4 grid, and we did tone on tone. So we've got a pink section, a blue section, green section, and so on. We have 2 layouts left, my friends. This is using my current collection called Bloom Street. One of the pattern papers has these colorful diamonds, so I cut them out, layered them color on color to the watercoloring that I did on the background, and then machine stitched them in place. So we're back to the banner design that we saw in the beginning. Here is the last layout, one that I very recently shared here on my YouTube channel, how to create a rainbow star with modeling paste stars, and it was taken, these photos were taken just last month in May. Hey again, I hope you enjoyed flipping through 180 boy layouts with me. I hope you found tons of inspiration, and again, let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. Have a great day, and I will see you again soon.